welcome everyone. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us for today's webinar. I'll be your host today. My name is Berit Johannesson, and we have a slew of amazing presenters today, which include members from our implementation team. They'll introduce themselves a little bit later as they go through what they worked on, but I'm really glad that they're here and they're able to share with you some of their Zerion recipes today. All right, before we jump into the material, just some details on what's new. We have 2 new blog posts. We actually have more than 2 new blog posts once you go to our blog section, but these are probably some of the newer ones. The first one is 10 downfalls of traditional data collection. So you might want to check that out to make sure you're not doing any of those 10. And the second one we have listed here is We're Thankful For. And this is a blog post by our CEO, Zi Wang, where he dives into some of the things that he's thankful for within our Zerion internal team, as well as with our customers. And then we have one more webinar this year, and this is on a URL scheme. It's going through what it actually is, how to set it up, and how it can truly impact your projects. So if you're looking to learn more, definitely sign up for that webinar. Myself and some of my other teammates will be presenting on that material. And that's going to be the last webinar of 2017, but we'll have tons more coming in 2018. Now, before I go over and hand this over to our team who's presenting, I do want to ask a quick question. This is the question we ask at the start of every webinar. Just trying to figure out what your status is with using our platform, if you use iForm Builder, if you use Zerion, or if you're not yet a customer. So if you could go ahead and fill that out, that would be great. This is also a quick way for us to see who's paying attention and who we may have already lost. Okay, so it looks like everyone's responded, and I'll go ahead and close the poll and hand it over to our presenters.
Thanks, Barrett, and good afternoon, everybody. This is Jonathan Hsu over here. I am another solutions engineer from Zerion Software. I particularly focus on a lot of the training. Those of you who have attended webinars before, I'm sure you're very familiar with my voice and just the content I bring to you. Now, normally on a lot of these webinars, I handle them kind of solo when I present, but this is a special webinar to me. We did this topic last year, Cooking with Zerion, and what I did then was I went through the implementation team and I asked each one of them to contribute one of their favorite solutions that they had developed throughout the year. So we presented it in the form of like a recipe. Now this year I've gone a step above, and each of the team members has brought a solution to the table as well, but I also have them here with me today live so that they're going to be able to take a deeper dive into the particular portion of their solution that they worked on. So last year what happened was we had individual recipes that were really standalone, and this year what we've done is we've actually built an end-to-end workflow. So we're going to be encompassing the data collection. We're also going to talk about some of the outputs you have for that data. And then ultimately, we're going to finish up with how everything is connected. So we're going to connect all those dots. Now, I know that some of the users on the webinar today are iForm Builder only customers. Actually, the majority of them are. So some of the different outputs that you see you may not be familiar with. That's perfectly fine. In fact, one of the intentions of this webinar was to educate the audience a little bit more on some of the different capabilities that they may have as their data collection projects mature. For those customers who are Zerion customers and have access to this entire suite of software, this is going to allow you to further reimagine and be creative about some of the solutions you can put forward and give you some ideas about what you can develop. And then finally, if you are not a current customer, hopefully this will give you a high-level overview with some small technical details about how the software works and what you can imagine us being able to provide for you from the perspective of being a mobile data collection vendor. Now, this webinar is going to get started with a demonstration of the actual solution that we've built together. So the solution's context is going to be around the idea of conducting a survey on mobile data collection needs assessments. So what's happening here is we have a form, and then it connects through into both document generation as well as reports generation. After I go through a demonstration of the solution, then each of the different team members here with me is going to introduce themselves, and then they'll talk through a particular aspect of their portion. Now, at any point, as Barrett said earlier, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. It'll be a lot more engaging that way for both the audience, for you all, as well as ourselves here. We work as a team very closely on a day-to-day basis, and so having the collective knowledge of everybody in the room for this webinar is really an asset for you all. So let's move forward into the needs assessment form that I have built out. Before I show you the actual form, I want to give you an idea of the workflow so you'll know what to expect when I show each of the individual pieces. So the workflow starts as a mobile data collection project. What's happening here is we're using the form as a survey tool. The context is that I, as the person filling out the form, would be interviewing a participant, and I'd be asking them about the different challenges they're facing in their data collection needs. After I ask them all the questions and after we fill out the form, that record would get submitted, and then it'll move through this middle piece, which we'll talk about at the very end, into the two final destinations. The top one is going to be a reports dashboard with the purpose of visually organizing the data, specifically with the intention of tying back to business objectives. The bottom branch is going to be to generate a summary document, and the purpose of that document is to give the participant a hard copy of what they had collected, as well as feedback actually based on what they responded with. Also, on top of that, as a surveyor, I would have a copy sent to me as well for record keeping. So at this point, let's go ahead and jump into the solution. I'm going to start by showing us all the form. Now, I have a record here that I have very partially filled out at the top. I just have the name, email address, organization, and industry selected. And I'm going to continue filling out the rest of the form now for everyone. We're going to jump down here to what areas of data collection you struggle with. And so I have a couple of different areas listed, and I'm going to go through the list. So you may have speed as an issue, meaning that when you're collecting data on a traditional pen and paper method, it's too slow. We could have issues of accuracy where you're putting in incorrect values. I separate this from consistency, which is the standardization of the data that you're entering. So imagine entering the state. You may have the state as an abbreviation. You may have the full name of the state, uppercase, lowercase. Those types of things are going to fall under the category of being consistent data. Manually collating data, so if you have multiple forms that you have to fill out as part of one large data collection project, you may have to assemble those manually if you do that on paper. Multimedia, meaning if you need to have photos or possibly sound included in your data collection, that's going to be something that we're able to address using mobile data collection. Mapping or GIS needs is another challenge that we see quite commonly. And then rounding this out, we have complexity of the form, meaning skip logic or setting up sections of one-to-many data. And then lastly, transposing. So under the context of filling out a paper form, you may have to then take that paper record to the office afterwards and then type it into whatever system you're working in. So you're really entering in the data twice, once on paper and then once electronically. For this demo, I'm just going to choose a few of these options. I'll choose 3 of them and select. After that, you'll notice that a subform shows up down here below, asking to complete a needs assessment for each challenge. Now I'm going to enter into the subform, and at the top you'll notice that it gives me as a label which assessment I am looking at. So right now I'm looking at speed. I'm going to say that speed is going to be a very severe challenge. The importance of finding the solution is very high, and then finally this will dramatically or significantly impact the organization if we address this challenge. Now, I could add additional details down below. I'm not going to do that for this record. And you'll notice that there's also a summary at the bottom here that shows what I've entered so far. I'm going to finish this record. I'm going to enter in another one. This subform is going to be for multimedia. We'll say this is a relatively low scoring challenge. And I'll enter in some small text here. It's like photos would be a nice enhancement. We'll finish this. And then I'll have my third challenge area and I'll fill out the form one more time for transposing, and we'll say this is also a big, big problem for us. So we'll give this max scores. We'll say done. After I filled out a subform for each of the challenge areas I selected, you'll notice down below in my form, I actually have a summary of what was filled out in each of the different subforms. And just to give you a sneak peek, this is what TAC is going to be talking about during the form building. After that, I have an assessment score calculated down below as well. And then to finish up the form, there's a simple yes/no asking if I have a paper form that's currently in use. If I say yes, it's going to show you an option to take a picture of the form. For this, I'm just going to say no and finish this up. I'm going to say done. You'll notice that the icon on the right-hand side is now an hourglass. Originally, it was a pencil. So at first, the record was saved. Now the record has been marked as completed. I'm going to sync my device. And during this process, what's happening is the record, which is local to my iPad, is being uploaded to our cloud storage and then uploaded to our iForm Builder web space. After that, it's also going to trigger the remaining portions of this workflow that we're going to talk through next. So I'm just waiting for my device to finish syncing, which it just did. And so now what I want to do is jump over to my web browser and show you both the reports as well as the document. We'll start with the reporting dashboard. And the first thing is you'll notice that down here, if I refresh this dashboard, I'm going to get the most up-to-date data shown. And so over here I have a list of assessment scores and a breakdown. We have a bunch of different visualizations, and I don't want to talk about this too much because Mark's going to be talking through the reports side of things and the different business objectives each of these views is associated with. But just know that you have this dashboard assembled of each of these independent views. Each view connects to a particular business objective, and that allows you to have better decision making around your data. So having a form that is optimized for data collection is great, but one of the challenges we see quite frequently is that the structure of the data inside of the form is not in the best shape in order to get actual metrics and KPIs out of it. So here what we've done is we've broken the data out into those individual views so you can actually connect them to business objectives. Now I'm going to actually jump into my email because after I submitted that record, I have the document generated and I actually have it delivered to an email address specified. So I want to open this up real quickly. And you'll notice at the top here, we're going to have the survey conducted by, as well as the information on the form. Down below here, you're going to see a set of tables for the different challenge areas. And these are the scores that I had entered. You'll notice that for the second subform, there's also additional details at the bottom of each table. Finally, we have our assessment score, and this was a 53.6. And then we have feedback down below. And for this feedback, I did want to highlight that this is actually being scored as having moderate data challenges. The way we have the solution built out, there are minor, moderate, and severe challenges. So that's all determined based on your assessment score. And that's actually the piece I'll be diving into a little bit deeper later on, looking at how to conditionally show each of the different sections or the different text based on a value. Now, before I move forward and before I round out the rest of the demonstration, Barrett, I did want to check in real quickly if you or the audience had any questions about what I just showed.
I've answered the questions that have come in, and I'll just say to everyone who's listening, please continue to send in your questions. These are fantastic. Awesome. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. And so I've already alluded to TAC talking about the form building, Mark talking about the dashboarding and the reports, and then I'll be going through the document generation. I did want to also note that Penny is going to be talking through that middle piece, the Dataflow automation, and that's something I haven't shown yet. We're going to hold that off for the very end of the webinar, and that's going to be the final service that we present and demonstrate and talk through. So if there's no other questions at this point, I'm going to jump back into my slides here, and I'm going to hand this over to TAC, and she's going to talk through some of the form building.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tak. I'm a solutions engineer here. So today I'm going to talk about the logic behind the scene on the iForm builder. So today I'm going to talk about how to summarize the subform data and bring it to the parent level. So the challenge here about the subform records is that they are difficult to read as a set of data. So I'm going to show you the solution in a second. And in here on the slide, you see the subform data and the parent data level here. So we just aggregate all the subform data into the parent level, and I'm going to show you the form here.
So Tack, while you're pulling up the form builder, I just wanted to kind of elaborate on that. What we're really doing here is we're doing this in 2 steps, right? So you're taking the assessment for individual challenge and you're going to summarize that in the child record, right? And then we're taking each of the child record summaries and then putting it as a big summary inside of the parent. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Cool.
So we do have 2 forms here, the parent form and the subform. So what you're looking at here is the parent form, and we're going to start from the subform. So in the subform, we have the summary field, which is this one, and in the smart control dynamic value, you will see some JavaScript in here. So this one is just a concatenation of all the fields on this form. And I just put everything in this summary field. So we can just bring this summary field into the parent. So on the parent level, we have the subform. We have multi-select of the challenges. And then we have the subform here. And then beneath the subform, we have the summary that we just bring the data from the subform over. So in the dynamic label here, you will see we use the JavaScript function called iForm append string. So the iForm append string is the page level JavaScript that you see the function here that we put in the parent page level. So this is the important piece. You have to have this piece in the parent level. Otherwise, your iForm append string will not work. So once you have that one in the page level JavaScript, then you can start calling it from here, from the dynamic label or the dynamic value. So the syntax here in the dynamic value of the iForm append string is starting with the form name over here, and then dot, and then the subform element name, followed by the element name of the subform, which is the summary here. So there are 2 ways to do this, to append string. You can just append string on the parent level without having the summary field on the subform. So for example, we have the severity here, this one. You can just bring the severity into the parent and then just concatenate it over here and just call another field here. So this is another way to do it. But the reason that I did the summary on the subform, because we have the limitation on the dynamic label and the dynamic value that we have only, we allow only 300 characters here. So if you append many fields together, you might exceed the limit here, and it would just cut off your function here.
Okay. Hey, Tag, I had a quick question actually. I had used the language earlier when I was demoing the form, but I do know that we have some people who aren't iForm Builder customers, so they may not be familiar with it or comfortable with it. Mm-hmm. But could you explain to everybody what a subform is and the relationship between the parent and the child?
Okay, sure. So the subform is just the subform element is just another field on the form that will allow you to create a subsection on the larger form. So it allows you to bring another form into the main form. So the main form in this scenario we call the parent form, and the subform is the form that you bring into the parent we call the child form. So the benefit of the subform is it allows you to just repeat, fill out many times as you like, and it can be one-to-one or one-to-many relationship.
Okay, cool. And so it sounds like You may want to use subforms if you have a really long form and you want to split it up into individual sections, or you may want to use subforms if you have a portion of the form that repeats, that you want to fill it out more than one time.
Right, that's correct.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, and so for anyone who may not or maybe having trouble understanding this as a concept, I want to give you a particular use case for this. We've had groups who will create forms that are really, really long. They could be, even more than 100 elements, and we actually recommend against this for the purpose of the storage behind the scenes, the actual database table. There are some technical limitations around that. Moreover, what can also happen is when you upload those records, if you have it all in one giant form, the upload time can be affected. You have a higher chance of running into that record not syncing properly. So for that reason, we always try to recommend keeping your forms a little bit smaller if possible. Using subforms is one of the best strategies for doing that. In terms of using a one-to-many relationship, for example, with this form, if multiple needs areas were selected, I want to fill out this assessment more than one time. Now, if you've ever filled out a paper form where you had to put down your phone numbers, there are placeholders for, home, work, and mobile number, but sometimes you don't fill them all out. Working on a mobile platform, you won't have that wasted space shown on the form. You can just have a phone number subform, which will be filled out for as many times as you need to actually fill it out. So it's a way of making your form fit to the exact needs of the data collector. Okay. Tak, was there anything else that you wanted to show with respect to the summary report?
Okay, there is another thing here is the assessment score. So in the dynamic value, we use the iForm builder.math.sum is the built-in function that available for you to use without copying any JavaScript into the page level. So it's the same syntax here. Starts with the form name, and then the subform element name, and then the element name of the field on the subform that you want to do the summary.
Okay, and then you said that this is a built-in function, so this is something that is documented on the Customer Success Center, and it's also something that's just natively available in the form builder.
So there is an article available on the Customer Success Center. You can just look up for it, and what you can do, you can just copy this function and start using it.
Okay, very cool.
Hey guys, just had a question to myself here. What happens if I try to add too many challenges?
So that's Mark, by the way, everyone. So do you mean if I choose 3 challenges and I try to fill out an additional subform?
Correct.
Okay. Well, instead of explaining it, let me actually just jump back into the device and show what happens in this form. This is a good question. One of the other things that is a benefit of using mobile data collection is the ability to validate what is being entered on the fly. So let's say I choose only one section. I'll just choose speed. And so it says I need to complete a needs assessment for that. I'm going to just submit this record right away. I'll press done. And so now we'll go ahead and do what you asked. I'm going to try to submit another subform record. Now you'll notice at the top under needs assessment, there is no needs assessment listed. And so what will happen is if I try to press done, I've actually written in some client validation here. And so those are going to be rules that have to be followed in order for the record to be submitted. Now here it says this record cannot be submitted. Please press the back button in the upper left and discard the record. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to press back. You'll notice the record is still here though, so I'm going to go ahead and, whoops, let's go ahead and delete this record. And then now I can continue on with my data collection. While we're here in the form, actually, one of the other things I wanted to highlight was at the top. I kind of glossed over this at the beginning. There's a label that says Mobile Data Collection Needs Assessment Survey administered by. Now, that's not hard-coded in there with my name and my user. This is actually another built-in function, similar to the one Tak had mentioned earlier. This one is going to use the first and last name as well as the username of the person who's logged into the app. Now, the reason I bring this up is because this is done through a technique called a dynamic label. And Tack, if you could speak to the audience about the difference between a dynamic label and a dynamic value, that would be awesome.
Okay, sure. So the dynamic value and the dynamic label, they serve the same purpose of allow you to control, put in the logic and control over them, over this value or label. But the difference is the label will just, it's like the question on the form, it's the text that show on the app. The data won't get submitted with the record when you submit the whole record to the server. But the dynamic value will control over the answer or whatever that you, the value that you put into the form.
Okay. So the label is the text that's shown, like you said, instructions for the data collector. Dynamic value is the actual input of the element.
Right, that's correct.
Awesome. And then there's actually one final thing I wanted you to demo for everybody and to talk through, and that is the functionality where the subform wasn't able to be filled out until the multi-select was entered. In fact, the subform was hidden. So could you talk about how the subform was hidden until the multi-select was filled out?
Sure. So here, we can use the condition value for this one to hide and show the field. So you put in the logic into the condition value. So in the subform here, you will see in the condition value, you see it will just show only when the data underscore collection underscore challenges is greater than 0. So this field is the multi-select up here. So the subform will show only this multi-select is has the data in there.
Okay, so the condition value is responsible for the visibility, showing or hiding. Now, let me go ahead and show one last thing. So the subform was shown conditionally because the expression has to evaluate to true or false. Now, in the event of something like this read-only field, you'll notice the condition value is false. And what that means is that it will always be hidden because false is always going to be false. Now, for anybody who wants to use this form as a template or who wants to import the form and dissect it later on their own, just like with all the other webinars we do, we will be giving you all of the presentation materials that we're showing today. That's going to include a form package of this form and then all the other pieces as well, a link to the dashboard and then also a copy of the document that's generated. So Barrett, I wanted to check in real quickly. Are there any questions that have been asked from the audience?
Yeah, there are. There's two that I'm going to bring up right now. The first one is really about, with the smart controls, you're showing JavaScript. And so people are wondering, what resources are available to them if they don't know JavaScript?
That's a really good question. So some of the techniques we're showing in this form, I would say are not necessarily advanced, but they definitely have a certain level of creativity there that you may not realize you can do initially. For people who are either new to JavaScript or have a JavaScript background but maybe new to form building, what I would recommend they do is go on the Customer Success Center, and there's going to be a lot of articles in the knowledge base that handle walking through the process of setting up these different functionalities. On top of that, I know that we all make a concerted effort during these webinars to show these types of solutions and give example forms and example templates. So I would also recommend continuing to follow along with the webinars. And then finally, we do have the option of our live chat or just submitting posts in the community. If you have an idea of something that you want to try to add to your form, but you're unsure of how to go about doing that, I would recommend using either of those outlets.
Great, thank you for that. Now there was one other request, and this individual was hoping they could see how the subform was populated based on the multi-select options. So I'm assuming that's talking through the label at the very top of the subform.
Okay, yeah, that part. And so again, the technique for this is actually not too complicated, but it required a certain level of creativity. So first of all, let me go back to the form and make sure that everyone knows what I'm going to be speaking to. I'm going to start a new record here. And so I believe what this question is asking is focused on the way, if I choose options in this multi-select, first of all, you'll notice that there is a list here under the selected challenge areas. So we have consistency, collation, and multimedia. When I enter the subform, it's going to show consistency at the very top. So it actually pulls from those selections. If I press done, the second time I open the subform, it's going to show manual collation, which was my second selection. And then finally, when I open it the third time, it'll show multimedia, as you see here. So the way we accomplish that in the form is by using, again, a page-level JavaScript function. And the function is actually up here at the top. So the way this function works is it requires two things. It's going to require the selection of the multi-select. And so this is actually going to be a comma-separated list of the labels. The second piece is the position. So what position in that line do I want to return? Now the idea or the premise here is that in my subform, I have what's called an index. An index is going to be nothing more than your place in line. I like to think of it as if you go to the deli or you go to the supermarket and you have a place in line, that index is a numeric way of saying, okay, I'm the first person in line, second person in line. Down here, we'll see how I use the function with the label. And I'm going to go ahead and copy this to a text editor so it's a little bit easier to see. Okay, just break this apart. So the first thing is I'm going to actually pass the value of the multi-select. So that's the first part here. The second thing is I'm going to take the subform, which is called assessments, and the index specifically of the subform. So if this is the first record that they're filling out in the subform, it would be index 0. If it's the second record, index 1, 2, and so on. This piece here is a JavaScript function to just make everything capitalized, but that's not going to be very important in terms of the actual implementation of the solution. That's just for formatting. Now what I'm doing is I'm going to take the index. So imagine it's the first subform I fill out, first spot in line. Going back into my form builder in the page level JavaScript, I'm going to take my multi-select, which is that comma separated list, and I'm going to say I want the first spot in line to show, or the second subform record will show the second spot in line. And that's how it matches up one-to-one. Now when Mark asked that question about what happens if you fill out too many subform records, what's going on here is inside of the multi-select, it's going to say, hey, I want the fourth option to be shown. But there is no fourth option, and that's why it's blank, and that's why the client validation fails. Barrett, do you know if that answered the person's question or if there's anything else I can go through about that?
No, I mean, yes, it answered their question, and I don't think you need to go through any of the other pieces. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Were there any other questions about the form building?
Not at this time.
Okay. So, thank you so much for going through the form building. What we're going to be doing next is transitioning into the PDF generation. And this is actually the portion that I'm going to be presenting. So, the PDF is going to be a static document that's made when the record is submitted. So the idea here is one record gets sent in, one PDF gets generated and sent out. Now the particular challenge and solution, the recipe that I wanted to go through for the PDF generation was this idea of giving feedback based on the assessment score. So if I'm generating a document, I may want the feedback to say, hey, your needs are really not that bad. Sure, you could gain something from mobile data collection, but it's not going to be urgent. Or maybe if their needs are very severe, they'll say, hey, you needed to have this done immediately because you're going to have tremendous benefits right away. The solution I came up with in order to do this was to use what are called if-else statements inside of my document template. And so then what happens is each section is going to be shown dynamically depending on the assessment score. Now the way we have this broken up, the assessment score is actually calculated on the form. The way it's calculated is we're going to take the sum of each of those scores, so the 3 different range values, add it up across all the subform records, and we're going to multiply it by 0.8. Now if my score happens to be less than 30, we're going to categorize that as having minor challenges with respect to your data collection. If the score is between 30 and 60, we'll call that moderate. And then finally, if the score is greater than 60, we'll say those are severe challenges and need to be addressed rather quickly. Taking this flowchart and translating it into the document logic, it's going to look something like this at the bottom. So this is an excerpt from the actual document template, and I'm going to show you the template as well afterwards. But just to make sure that it's more clear, I have this visually here on the slides for everybody. Now we'll start at the top, and we'll notice that you'll have an if here. So the way the if statement works, similar to the form building the tax showed, is when that condition is true, we'll execute that section. In the event the expression is not true, then we'll jump down to the next portion. So I have what's called a merge field or a variable. If assessment score is less than 30, then we're going to show this text here. And you'll notice that it says based on your assessment score, your data challenges are minor. Now, assuming that they are not less than 30, meaning they're greater than, we're then going to say, okay, if that's not it, then what if the assessment score is less than 60? So now we're looking at that range, the space between 60 and 30. In that case, we would have moderate challenges. And then finally, anything else is going to be greater than 60, meaning that you would have severe data challenges. At the end, we're going to close our if statement. Now, those curly braces are a required syntax inside of the document template, which I'm going to open up next. And again, the colors don't matter. It's just to make it a little bit easier to read. So next, let's jump into the template itself. And this is actually the section that you'll see here. I'm going to highlight the command logic. So this is my if statement. This is the portion for the else if. And then this is the else. So those are going to be the three different section headers. And then this final command closes my if statement. So that's the end of it. It's the closing boundary. Some other things about this form I wanted to show. We'll skip up here to the top. You'll notice that we have fields like this date field over here. This is called a merge field. And so all that is going to be a placeholder where I want to take data from my record and connect it to this placeholder. So whatever date I enter in the form, that date will be shown here. The same thing happens for collector first name, collector last name, participant name, organization, and industry. Now, if you take a look at these materials after the webinar, especially if you look at the form, you'll notice that the merge fields correspond with the data column names of each of the elements in the form. That is done intentionally as a best practice to make sure it's easier to connect all the dots together. Now, one other thing I wanted to go through as we scroll down here is these challenge areas. And inside of the challenge areas, I have a for each loop, and I'm not going to get too far into the technical details of this, but what I want to highlight is that this table is only shown once on the document template, but when the document is generated, then it's going to be repeated for as many times as necessary. And then again, we have the closing command for the for each, or I'm sorry, we have the opening command and then the closing command at the end. Real quick check-in, Barrett, do you have any questions about what's been talked about so far?
So the only question that came up was just if where someone would go to find out more information about Zerion documents and using them.
Sure. So if you're already using Zerion documents and you're looking for more literature and knowledge-based articles, then the Customer Success Center is a great opportunity to do that. I would also recommend jumping on chat or talking to your technical coach or just reaching out to us in general. Now, in terms of being a prospective customer, like you want to learn more about Zerion documents and what it can accomplish, our email address is at the top of this webinar slides. I would recommend any questions you can send it to us. Also, I would suggest reaching out to your account manager, and they'll be able to give you a lot of guidance, not only on documents as a service, but trying to help you decide if documents is going to be the right solution for you.
Hey, John, I have a question here about the document. So is email the only method of delivery?
Good question. So let's see here. With this document template and when I was demoing it, I went into my email to show you what was produced. Now, if I jump into the actual documents service, let me just refresh my page, make sure I'm not timed out. That's what I was looking for. What I'm going to show everyone is that email is not the only way you can deliver these documents, in fact. Let me search for my template. So if I go over here to this Deliver tab, what you'll notice is I have email specified here as a delivery. Now, if I choose New Delivery, there's actually a lot of different destinations or delivery endpoints I can send these generated documents to. I did choose email at first, but if I wanted to send them to a cloud storage service such as Amazon S3, Dropbox, or Google Drive, I can do that very easily by just authenticating with each of those services. Additionally, I could send this into my Salesforce account, or I could even have this sent to someone as an Adobe signature required document. Okay, those are some of the ones I highlighted are some of the ones that are most commonly used. For the demo purposes, and especially when we're starting to develop this, we'll use email quite frequently. One of the other things is we get a lot of feedback from people who are iForm Builder customers who ask us if there's any way they can customize the email deliveries they get for records that are submitted, and this is one of the best solutions that we have for you. You can customize your template in any way you want. You'll notice I was in Microsoft Word when I was showing you the template. So anything you can do in Word, you can do to your template and have it uploaded as that document template. Another really cool thing is Word and PDFs are not the only formats you can do this in. You can also upload an Excel sheet if you would like. We see groups do that when they have a lot of calculations necessary based on the data. So they may have the first sheet that has the merge fields on it with all of the different placeholders. Sheets afterwards are going to reference that first sheet and then do all of the calculations in the background. Okay. Thanks, Tack. And Barrett, were there any other questions from the audience?
Nope, not at this time.
Hey, John, another question for you. Just kind of curious, what happens if an image is not taken?
Okay, so let me actually jump back up here to the top of the document. So this was not shown in the demo of what I had picked up, is this photo of a paper form, and that's because I didn't take a photo on my form when I filled it out. So this is again another example of our if logic, where we're going to conditionally show or hide a portion of the document template. In this scenario, if the form image, which is going to be the URL or the link to the image, is not equal to null, meaning there's an actual URL there, we're going to show this heading, photo of paper form, and then we'll print out the image itself underneath. In my form, because I did not pick an image, this was equal to null, and so the photo wasn't shown. Okay. Barrett, I noticed a question popped up in the GoToWebinar. Is there anything that we'd be able to answer, or is it something that you are going to answer on your own?
I've got it, thank you.
Perfect, just checking in. All right, well, those were all the different highlights I wanted to show with the document template. Again, I am going to be making both the document available for everybody afterwards, as well as the template, so you'll be able to take a look under the hood with that. And then now what I'm going to do is hand over the webinar controls to my colleague Mark, who's going to talk through the dashboards and reports.
Thanks, John. My name is Mark Ha. I'm also a solutions engineer here at Zerion. I want to talk a little bit about Zerion reports, and specifically how you can visualize your real-time data. Besides the documents that can get created, we also have dashboards, which display real-time tables, custom tables, and even custom charts. I want to present today a little bit about my piece in this whole recipe, which is the business dashboard. Let's dive into that. Okay. So we have this dashboard here, and basically each section is going to talk to like each specific business business solution, right? So over here, we have the overall assessment score, which when John filled out the form, will list the date the survey or the assessment was taken, each organization's name, and its overall score. And we also have it set up here where if the score range is from, I believe, 0 to 30, we display yellow, 30 to 60 gives orange, and 60 and above is red, which would indicate a red score. Let's take a look at that. Let's dive into that.
So, Mark, just to interject real quickly, those conditional formattings, the colorings match the same range in the document, right?
Correct.
Okay. So the other thing we can look at is if we see it's red, we know exactly what feedback they got in their document.
Yes.
Cool.
Exactly. So with the scores, maybe you want to dig in a bit deeper and find out exactly what each challenge in each organization is. So, and with that, we'll bring up the assessment scores breakdown. So over here on the right, the top right, we have each organization again, each challenge they selected in the assessment, and next to that, of course, each score that they chose, the severity, the importance, and the impact, which is another way of breaking down into getting kind of a deeper dive into things. Now, me personally, I like more color-coded stuff, more charts than reports. This gives me a little bit more wow factor as well. So over here in the middle, we have a big pie chart that basically shows the percentages of the total assessment that has every record that has been taken here. And each section is a percentage. And if we hover over it, we also get a record count and the percentage of challenges. Of course, here you see the 15.8. Complexity seems to be the biggest challenge area overall. And these smaller pieces with 1%, 2%, not so much of an issue.
Okay. So, Mark, this view, is this just for a single record, or is this looking at all the data together?
All the data together.
Okay. And then would I be able, what would I use this view for? So seeing that like the speed is 14% and accuracy is 7%, what does that mean?
It's the overall people that have difficulties in that certain area. I would focus more on the bigger numbers myself.
Got it.
So smaller numbers, maybe we can put that off till later. Let's focus on what the big things are, big ticket items are.
Okay,
so this case seems to be multimedia and complexity.
Got it. So this is saying that complexity, speed,
correct,
or multimedia. Those are the things that are most frequently being cited as challenge areas.
Overall, yes.
Very
correct.
Cool.
And as we go down over here, we have a bar chart and an area chart. Those at the bottom of each, we again highlight each challenge area along with the average of the severity, the importance, and the impact. Again, another way to look at how the scores are affecting each challenge area. Smaller bars, of course, not as big of an impact versus the bigger bars. With that, John, would you know what the difference between a bar chart and an area chart is?
Yes, I was actually noticing that in the legend, both of the views are showing the average scores for severity, importance, and impact. If I was looking at this dashboard, both are going to kind of give you the breakdown relative to each other, and I actually think the bar chart does a better job of that. So I can see with the bar chart, for example, that in accuracy, importance is lower than severity and impact. This is more apparent in the GIS bracket, where impact is significantly higher than importance and severity. So I think that the different scores relative to one another inside of that specific challenge area is easier to view inside the bar chart. Now, if we look at the area chart, you can still get that information, but to me, it's better to represent the overall importance or the overall influence of that one challenge area because what's happening is the different areas are stacked on top of each other. So what I mean by that is I can say as an overall number that multimedia is generally just more important than whatever we have over here, which is GIS. Or I can say something like accuracy is more important than manual collation, which here is the lowest one of all of them. So that's going to give you a summation or a sum or a total of that one challenge area for the averages of each of the different scores. Does that make sense, Mark?
Yes, nailed it.
Very cool. I actually have a question to throw back at you for this dashboard. So we're looking at it on this webinar, but if I was using this in a real project, how would I be able to access this dashboard? Do I have to log in every time? How can I view this?
Well, it can be sent out as either a private or public link. We found out the most, popular way is definitely the public link, where we can make a public link to this, share it among yourselves. Another cool thing is it can be emailed out in a timely manner, once a month, once a week, even every 5th of the month. We can set an automatic schedule and have it sent out.
Okay, nice.
So Mark, I know that some of our customers will have the need of data cleaning, and we know that it's not the best way to do that in iForm Builder, like to update the records in iForm Builder. So can we just go ahead and change the data in the report table because it looks more flexible?
We don't recommend going that route of changing the data in the reports. It's better to have consistency across the board. So if you're going to do any type of data cleansing or editing, it should be done at the point of origin, which is definitely in the iForm Builder table. And it will reflect that here.
Yeah, I know I've run into that issue before where I'll change the data in Excel, for example, after I download it. But then the problem is I now have to worry about that data being overwritten if I download that file again. So if you make the change in iForm Builder, take the extra time to do that, then you know that your data is consistent across all different services you have integrated with iForm Builder with your data collection.
Correct. It's great to be consistent across the board. Don't run into issues that way.
Hey, Barrett, I wanted to check in again. Any questions about reports that we'd be able to answer?
Yeah, there's one that I'll throw your way. This is asking, are these dashboards available per profile login? Such as we have admin profiles and user profiles, and I want the admin to collect all the user data collected and have this available in the admin view.
Yeah,
so just making it available to the admins to clarify.
Got it. Yeah, you can require a login with access, and then you can specify the users if you want. The other thing you can do is, and we've seen this done pretty frequently, one of the other methods of publishing the dashboard is to embed it in an HTML page. And we have a lot of customers who actually use SharePoint. And so what they'll do is they'll embed the dashboard in a SharePoint page that has restrictions on who can view it. So then you've effectively locked it down externally to a particular set of users.
Great, thank you. Okay. And that's it for now.
All right, very cool. All right, Mark, thank you so much for talking about the dashboards. And now, after we've gone through all of the different pieces here where we've done the data collection, we've shown the documents that are made, we've shown the reports that are made, I want to have Penny go ahead and round out the services by talking about Dataflow automation.
Sure. Thanks, John. Hey, everybody. I'm Penny, and like Mark, Tag, and Jonathan, I'm a solutions engineer with Zerion as well. And my 3 coworkers have walked you through different services that you can apply to your business. And I'm going to be your tour guide through exploring an important piece in our product that makes all those happen, which is Dataflow automation. Some of you may have heard of Dataflow automation and some may not, but Dataflow is really what drives the connection between iForm Builder and the document as well as report. So there are 2 main purposes Dataflow automation serves. One, restructuring data. Dataflow enables you to process your data into the format or structure you desire to better fit your need. 2. Dataflow connects your data to other services. It is the bridge between your data and a variety of services, including SQL Server, Zerion Documents, Zerion Report, and all other services that can be connected through OAuth. First, just a quick tour around the interface of Dataflow automation. So if you look at the canvas with all these dots and lines, this is where you draw your diagram of the flow. So these green icons are webhooks, which connect with iForm Builder and receive data from iForm Builder. And in the middle, these buckets are the record sets that store the data, either original or restructured. And at the rightmost side are those yellow icons, which we call actions. These are the exits of data where data will go out from the data flow and hit different services. Next, I want to give you 2 examples of how data was restructured in the data flow for this webinar. So first, flattening the data. Just 1 second, I need to relog in here. So first, flattening the data, as we know that the data that comes from iForm has a parent-child structure, and it is a one-to-many relationship. So this structure makes the data very difficult to process and analyze. So what I did is I used Dataflow automation to split data into 2 parts. The parent data goes to the parent form, and the subform data goes to the subform table. So I separated data into 2 record sets in the data flow, and they each will be connected to a table in Zerion Report for future analysis. The second example, the dates in the original data from iForm Builder follow the format of year, month, and day. And I prefer it to be month, day, year. So I use some of the JavaScript to convert the date to the format I want. I use some JavaScript to do that. So now the format of the date is year, month, day, and year, and all those data that goes into document and report will have the correct format. As you know that you will be able to write JavaScript in iForm Builder to do the same thing, but the advantage of doing it in Dataflow is to put all the heavy lifting data processing behind the scene and reduce the burden of the form itself. So the form should only be intended for data collection, not data processing. And Dataflow automation is a very powerful and flexible data processing tool for you to transform your data into whatever format you like. And next, as I mentioned, Dataflow can also connect your data with different services, and we're going to take a quick look at that as well. So the services we also call actions in Dataflow. And in Dataflow automation, we can send real-time data to databases like SQL Server, and we can send data to documents like PDF or Word document, and we can send data out through emails. And the next is forms. So the data can be sent back to iForm as well to create new records or record assignment or dynamic option list. And the next one is HTTP post. The data can be posted to your endpoints in the format of JSON or others. And then the data can also be sent to report tables and generate analysis from there, which Mark has already demonstrated. These are the services available currently, and our team is working towards building an OAuth connection that can be used to connect to all other online services. and that will make Dataflow even more powerful.
Hey, Penny, I wanted to jump in real quickly. You had mentioned that data from iForm Builder gets pushed into Dataflow via that webhook, but then you also listed iForm Builder as a potential action. So that means that you can also send data to iForm Builder from the Dataflow, correct?
Yep, exactly.
Okay. Cool. And I wanted to just share another use case that helps kind of explain the purposes of that. The idea of having your record from iForm Builder go into Dataflow and then back out to iForm Builder. What we've done in the past is we've had groups who had to do extensive calculations on the form in order to do either formulas or a lot of the logic involved. And a lot of the times that would either slow down the performance of the app, or more importantly, it would run into a lot of development considerations that made the form a little bit more difficult to build. Using Dataflow, what we've done now is we actually do a lot of the calculations as a post process, meaning after the record is submitted, then those calculations are done in Dataflow, and then the action connects back to iForm Builder. So that record is then updated with those calculations. This way, your form is really only used for data collection. You don't have to build a lot of that really complex page-level JavaScript or use a lot of the different formulas inside of your form building. It's only going to be collecting data. The Dataflow handles a lot of that calculation, a lot of the post-processing, and then it will update back to iForm Builder. Penny, did you have any other use cases you could share with people so they can understand that connection between iForm Builder back to iForm Builder?
Sure, that was a really good use case, John. And I do find another use case for this, which is really useful. So actually, it is creating and assigning records. So imagine that you have an order form, and whenever a new order is created, you want to create a job in another form and assign a job to the inspectors for them to complete. So Dataflow can automate this whole process.
Okay, and so that's also, it's able to be dynamic.
Yep.
Right. So you can have, depending on conditions or form values, the assignments are going to be not the same every time.
Exactly.
Okay, very cool. Tak, do you have any use cases you wanted to share?
Yes, I have one group that use the Dataflow to combine the data from multiple forms into a single form. So they just submit the data at the different times, and then at the end, they all go into the same form. So what they use in this case is they just on each form they have the same work order number. That will be the unique value that connect all the multiple forms together. And once they submit the data to the Dataflow, it would just look up that work order number and just send it to the form, to another table, and update that one.
Okay, neat. So what we're doing is using Dataflow to almost build like a lookup that will connect all the different records together and assemble one large record.
That's correct. And the benefit of it is just they can, once they have that big single form, they can just create a document from that form.
Okay, very cool. Mark, anything that you want to contribute?
With Dataflow, one group that I had, they basically had one form with a bunch of subforms, some multiple, some single paging. But to work with that in reports to make it easier, we had to flatten it all out. So basically, we extracted each subform from the parent data and pushed each separate section into different tables and reports, which again, it's much easier to work with in that regards.
Okay.
So without Dataflow, that would have been a big mess to deal with.
Yeah, definitely. So Mark and Penny, it sounds like the process we did in this Dataflow with flattening the record by pulling out the child form, the multi-paging subform of the assessments. Mark, in your example, you did the same thing, but just on a much larger scale, right?
Correct.
Okay, very cool. Barrett, wanted to do another quick check-in to see if there are any questions that we'd be able to answer.
I think right now there are a lot of good questions coming in, but I think they've all been answered.
Okay. Excellent. So now what I wanted to do was kind of wrap up everything for this webinar. I know that we had originally scheduled this for an hour and a half. I wanted to leave time to make sure that if there were questions, we weren't going to be limited based on our time. We presented a lot of different content here for you today. I know this was a lot to take in as well. Again, I want to reiterate the fact that a recording of this webinar will be made available. All of the material that we've built for this webinar will also be made available. So that means that your form will be made available to you. The exports of the data flow, the document template, all of that will be made available. We'll also provide you a link to the dashboard. So you can really see all the different moving parts. And if you want to take a look under the hood and get into the weeds of the actual solutions, you can do that. I hope that you were able to get something out of this webinar in terms of being able to reimagine or re-envision possible solutions for your own particular challenges. I know that especially with the form building, a lot of the times these form building techniques can be pretty specific to a particular use case, but using these different examples, that should hopefully stir the pot a little bit creatively, and you can find ways to interpret them into your own context. Now, Barrett, I did notice that the question icon popped up in GoToWebinar, so before I go through the different support options we have, I want to check in with you one more time.
Yeah, there are some questions coming in. Thanks for noticing. The first one is, you went through all these different solutions today. You went through data flow automation, the form building side, building the reports and building the documents. Do all of these aspects need to be built at the same time and all at once, or can they be built separately?
That's actually a really good question. So for this webinar, we built everything all together so that we could show you the entire end-to-end solution. But what I would probably say to that is, a lot of the times the development of a solution this robust is not actually done all in one big shot like we had for this webinar. Normally what will happen is you'll start with just your data collection. You know that you have a need focused around your data, and then you'll start collecting data, building forms, deploying them out to your users. And then what happens is, as your project matures, you may reach the point where you say, okay, hey, I need to make a PDF. I need to have some sort of a way to report on this. And then so you can start doing basic things there. And then again, as you continue to mature, then you may need more advanced data processing. As Penny had talked about, the restructuring of data, we talked through kind of briefly, but really that's a giant topic. There's so many things you can do with your data that it's really something that we have to handle on a case-by-case basis. But you don't have to build everything all together at one time. You can start small, and then you can grow to another service, or even within that one software, within one form, you can grow your form too, or you can grow your document template.
Great, thank you, John. I think that's really helpful. The other question that came in is, how do you know if reports or documents or data flow automation are solutions that you need? When is that time that you identify that need?
Yeah, so what I would say is, the time you want to identify that need, you'll know, because you'll think, man, I really wish I could do X. Then it's going to be a matter of getting in contact with us. My recommendation would be through your account manager and saying, hey, we want to be able to do this in our current workflow. So say we want to be able to look at the inspections we're doing and figure out who's not working fast enough. And then that will allow us to enter into a dialogue with you to figure out more deeply what your business needs are, and then give you the right guidance into the proper solution. So what I mean by that, for example, is you may want to say, hey, I want to look at my data as a whole. I want to be able to make this graph. And as you saw with Mark, the dashboards have lots of graphs, lots of visual data, and normally that's an easy connection to make. But, and I had alluded to this, I'd mentioned it very briefly, you can create Excel documents, so Excel templates, and depending on the frequency that you want to look at it, that might be a better solution. So it really just depends. Unfortunately, there's no easy answer there, but my recommendation would be to get a hold of us and then we'll be able to, again, dig deeper with you and help you figure out what's going to be best for your organization.
Great. I think that's some great advice, John. Now, before I hand it back to you to actually do the talking through the different support tools, I'm going to go ahead and launch a quick poll just to get some feedback before we lose anybody.
Okay.
So for this, if everyone could just take a second and fill this poll out, that would be great. This is just figuring out which of the solutions that were discovered and went through today that you found most interesting. And if there's more than one, definitely select all the ones that apply. Looks like almost everyone has filled this out, which is fantastic. If you haven't filled it out yet, then please just take a second to give us some of that insight. Okay, so I'll go ahead and close this poll and hand it back to you, John.
Thanks, Barrett. All right, everybody. So to wrap up this webinar, I did want to talk about some of the different channels you have in terms of reaching out to us, in terms of getting more information and becoming a more informed user of our software. The first recommendation, and I would almost always say this is going to be should be your first stop, is our Customer Success Center. Our knowledge base on the different services is continually growing on a daily basis, especially if you want to find step-by-step tutorials on how do I do X. That's going to be the place to go. The next thing I would say is to jump all the way over here to the right with our community forums. If you don't find your answer in the knowledge base, then most likely somebody else probably has that question as well. Engage the community there. Now, that's not only going to be other customers, so it's not only going to be your peers, that's also going to be us internally as well. We all check the forums, and so if you post on there, you will most likely get one of us responding as well. So you're just going to leverage everybody all in one arena. Down here, if you want a little bit more formal training, we do offer certifications, specifically in form building. We'll be starting those up again in 2018. That's a really, really great opportunity to get a very strong foundation on your form building so that you're able to understand all the different capabilities inside of the form builder, and also so that when we present these more specialized solutions, you're able to understand them and implement them more efficiently. And then, of course, I have to self-plug here, and I would recommend to jump into all of our different webinars and continue to tune in and register and listen to them. And then if you're looking for a little bit of a read or looking to see us more as a subject matter expert on data collection as well as the different initiatives we're around, definitely stay up to date with our Zerion blog. Now, the one other thing I don't have posted on here, and I always keep it off because I save it for last, is that this webinar will be posted on Zerion Academy, which is our learning management system for all things Zerion. So that's going to include iForm Builder. It's going to include certifications. It's going to include some of the different trainings that we do. So with the end of this webinar, you're going to be getting that email with a link to a recording. If you are not a Zerion Academy member, you will have a user created for you as well. And then we'll also have the webinar posted there so that you can have access to it within the Academy. I know that if anyone has gone through certification before, you have a username already. If you've attended previous webinars, you should have a user as well. And then if you've gone through any of our onboarding, you will also have a user there. But for everybody else, at the end of this webinar, within the next 48 hours, you can be expecting to have a user made, and then you'll be notified via email of that. Barrett, before I close out the webinar, I want to check in one final time to see if there are any questions we'd be able to answer.
I think we've got all the answers or all the questions so far, and everything's been answered. But just a reminder, if anything comes up for anybody later on, feel free to reach out to our team as well as reaching out to your Zerion account manager.
Yep. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I want to give a really special thanks to Mark, Penny, and TAC, who put in a lot of time putting this webinar together and getting things organized and being able to present these solutions to you. They do a lot of really good work, and it was definitely an intention of this webinar to highlight some of that. Barrett, I also want to thank you for hosting the webinar, getting all the questions organized and then sent over to us so we'd be able to answer them. And I guess at this point, we have one more webinar at the end of the year on URL scheme. I know, Barrett, you're going to be spearheading that one, but I'm excited to listen to it. And if anyone has any questions, like Barrett said, reach out to us, and we hope to see you at the next webinar. Thank you, everybody.